Today, we're going to look at America's historical newspapers. So this is a collection of 448 historical newspapers that range in date from 1690, the very first newspaper ever published in the United States, through 2000. The key to this resource is really the timeline interface that we've created that allows you to search out, based on the major eras of history, all the events that happened during that specific era. The timeline was actually designed after history textbooks from across the United States. Okay, to get to the resource, this would be your main Access World News link, and scrolling down, you would be able to see a link to the historical timeline. So you simply just click that historical timeline, and you can easily see that the timeline opens up, and it shows you all the major eras in U.S. history as you scroll down. So from 1690 all the way down through 2000. From here, it's very easy because you can select an era in history. So for example, if I were to go to World War II, you'll see what it does is it loads three different columns of information: government, military, and political, social, cultural issues, discoveries, and inventions. So although the system itself was designed to really support U.S. history studies, because we load the entire edition of every newspaper that we put in here. So if we've got the Times Union, for example, from 1850 to 1900, every issue is loaded. What we have found is it supports many other subject areas. So as you can see here, John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. So here I can get literary criticism of exactly what was thought about that work from actual primary sources of that day. Okay, Sikorsky perfects the helicopter. Okay, the Manhattan Project, which ushered in the nuclear era. So here's items that support science. Okay, so you'll find lots of things. United Nations found. Here's politics. So many things are actually supported within the timeline. Okay, from here you can simply click any item. So if I wanted to look at the Battle of Midway, because that's what I'm studying, you'll see that opens up, and from there the first thing you'll see is an actual summary of what that event in history was. So this is a secondary source. This is a summary that's written by our editorial team. Below that are actual primary sources. So here's our articles that were published in the newspapers of the day that support this event in history. Now, if you still didn't find what you were looking for by clicking on any of these articles, we have actually created searches as well to get you to more information. Okay, so from here, for example, if I wanted to look at the article here, War Extra Avenging Pearl Harbor, I can simply click on that, and that will open up that event in history and that article. And you'll see here that here I've got an article that was published in the Seattle Daily Times, June 7th, 1942. Okay, and here is that article as it was published in the newspaper. So I can actually view this entire article right from here. Okay, from here, what it will allow me to do is multiple items, as you can see from the tools across the top. So I can view more articles by going back to my timeline. I can search. So I can simply search this page, or I can search the entire issue for more information. Just type in a search term and it will go out and search this issue. This is information on, in this case, page 1 of the newspaper. I can create the citation. You'll see we've got all the different citation forms available, and the system does automatically export to EasyBib, RefWorks, and Noodle Tools. So example is if I click Noodle Tools, that will export that citation to Noodle Tools. And if I had Noodle Tools open, I would be able to select the project that I wanted to drop this into. Okay. And there's the actual MLA8 citation. I can email the information. So I can put who I want to send it to, from me, a message, and then from there, it will send the actual link to this document. So it doesn't actually send the document. What it sends is this link. When the recipient clicks on that link, if they're authenticated, it would automatically open up to this article. If they're not authenticated, then it will prompt them to put in their username and password, and they would then get in to view this specific article after they type that in. Okay. I can clip. So example is maybe I wanted to clip just this top caption and use this in my project. What I could do is select this clip. I'll size it. And then I have the option to send it directly to the printer, download it to a PDF, or save it to my Google Drive. So if I were to save it to my Google Drive, for example, I can include the citation. And what it's going to do is it's going to clip that off of that page, and it's going to save it out to my Google Drive. So I can tell it what drive I want to save it to, give it permission, and it will now begin that process to clip it out. And you'll note here that it's letting me know it's pushing out to my Google Drive. Okay. So from here now, what I can do is I can actually view everything I've pushed out to my Google Drive. All right. So I can see all these different articles and such that I've pushed out, including this one here. So if I wanted to view what that PDF looked like, I can simply click on it now and see, is that usable? As you can see, very clean, very easy. So very, very usable now. And the citation, although you can't see it, is right here. So that clip function really works well for pulling out information. When you're done pushing information to your Google Drive, you can simply sign out of your Google Drive, and it will, disconnect you basically from Google Drive and then return to the previous page. So I'm no longer connected to Google. I can print the information again, print the full page, or select a clip to print. Here would be to do a direct download as opposed to a clip. Okay, full page or clip, and the actual article. Now, you may recall I mentioned that we put the entire edition of the newspaper in the system. So here I can see that there's 82 pages in this newspaper when it was printed and delivered in 1942. So I can simply click next here and go to the next page if I wish and view the next page. Okay. So that's one way to move from page to page. So now I have the previous and the next button. I can use my pull down if I know what page I want to go to. Okay. And I've also got the thumbnails. And I see here we've got some looks like very interesting photos and so on from the Battle of Midway. So I can simply click and move directly to those as well that way. And again, using the clip function, I could clip out maybe just some specific photos from the Battle of Midway and so on. Okay, so as you can see, very, very easy to use. Now from here, I have the option to view more articles. So if I wanted to go to a different article because maybe I didn't find what I wanted. I can see there's more photographs here, film, stories about after the battle. So I can always click another story. And what that will do is that'll bring me to that article. So here I can see the Augusta Chronicle, June 12th, 1942. Okay. I can go back to the actual timeline entry itself. Okay. Battle of Midway, to run one of the searches because maybe I didn't find what I was looking for. So here I can look Battle of the Coral Sea and run that search. And that will actually create that search. That search was created by, again, our editorial team, which is made up of library science people, ex-school teachers, and so on. Okay, and here's that set of results. And from here, I can simply, click in a snippet on the article title, or even just click the preview to get an idea of what it is, and then view the document from there. So here, this would now open up this document that is May 11th, 1942, okay, around that search, okay? So you can see very, very easy to get to information using the timeline. If I wanted to return to the timeline, simply click timeline, and that will bring me back to where I started. Next thing I'll show you is going to be that very first newspaper ever published in the timeline. Okay, so if I click on the colonial era, 1690 to 1763, I can see here this first entry, 1690, I'll click on. And again, secondary source, summary of what this event was, and primary sources. So if I click on this very first article, that's going to bring me to the very first newspaper ever published, which was called Public Occurrences. And you can even see the way public is actually spelt out with a CK at the end. So here's that article, okay, and you'll see it looks exactly the same with the same tools available. But if I click on here, this will give us a chance to look at page 1 of the very first newspaper that was published in the United States. So here is Public Occurrences, okay. This newspaper was published just one day, September 25th, 1690. The day after it was published, the British came in and burnt down all the presses because they didn't like what was written, okay. So that's our Public Occurrences. Now, example, something I want to show you here is some of the typeset that was done back in the early days, because everything was hand typeset. So you'll note Public Occurrences, and you'll note the S here looks like an S, and the S here looks like an S. But notice the S here in Boston looks like an F. Back in the early days when they first started typesetting information, they used what was called a long S, okay? And that was because when an S was used in the middle of the word quite often, so here you can see, and all lowercase for Boston and for Thursday, the head and tail of the letter S would break off when it went to print. So they developed the long S to be used when it was in the middle of most words. And you'll see that throughout older articles into almost the 1800s, okay? I will show you how to use that information to your advantage, because if you were going to look up information at a later point in time, okay, you may not find the information you're looking for. So I will show you how that works as well. Now, for anybody that might be teaching in elementary grades and so on, although historical newspapers are difficult to use and search out sometimes because we've created this timeline, quite often you can find information that will be helpful to you. So one of the examples here is if I go to the Gilded Age, okay, I can scroll in here, and I note here is Ellis Island. Immigration, we know, is starting to be taught in around the 4th grade. So although this might be difficult for a 4th grader to read, there are some good cartoons in here, for example, that a fourth grade teacher could use to support how the United States was both pro and anti-immigration, even back when immigration first started. So example here is if I hit this pro cartoon, I see the Wyoming State Tribune from May 9, 1917 is a cartoon with Uncle Sam, as you can see, holding up the wall, okay, welcoming people right here into the United States. So a great illustration of how the United States was pro-immigration at the time. Now, if I go back to view articles and click on anti-immigration cartoon, here's another example of just the opposite that was printed in the Philadelphia Inquirer, January 23, 1903. And this would be, of course, Uncle Sam holding back the wall. So keeping immigration, keeping the borders closed. So very usable by the younger elementary school and middle school teachers, librarians, and so on to help support what is being taught. Okay. Click back on my timeline. All right. Now, the other thing I want to show you is I'll go to, in this case, back to World War II, actually. Let me go in here. And one of the other things we do is if there's an item that you're looking for, so maybe you're looking for something that belongs in 1943 and it was a military event. If you let us know what that event you're looking for is, we will get that into the hands of our editorial team, and they in turn will create that event in history and add it to the timeline. An example of that is right here, women in military service. Just recently, one of our customers had come to us and said, our students are doing a project on the women in World War II that served. Can you help us with that? So we sent that request over to our editorial team, and you'll see here, they created this event and added it to the timeline. So here, summary, all the events that support that, okay, and click on any one of them. And again, it's exactly like all other entries in the timeline. Okay, so here from 1943, the Springfield Republican is an article about women in service. Okay, so the whole idea behind this, of course, is the fact that if it's something that you're looking for, chances are it's something that somebody else, one of our other users, is going to need. So it's a service to help us better the resource and help not just you, but all our other customers. Okay. I click back here on the timeline, and that will bring us back to the timeline. What I'm going to do from here is I'm going to show you how to search out historical newspapers and information on historical newspapers. So I'm going to click back to search, and that'll bring me back to my search bar. So first example is I want to search out information on the Constitution, but I know that we've got this issue with the long S. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to search the word Constitution, but where that S appears, you'll note I've got a question mark. So it's CON question mark TITUTION. Okay. That question mark means it's going to now search out that word with any character here. So when I hit search, the way the system is set up, I'm going to search both my historical and my current information together. So it's going to bring back a large set of results, and it will automatically default to the newest. So what I'm going to immediately do is just click on oldest. So I flip my result set. Okay, and that will bring back the oldest result first so you can get a good illustration of what I was referring to, okay, by the word Constitution. So you can see right here in the snippet, okay, the word Constitution with the long S. If I go into that article, Okay, that will open up that article. Okay, so here's that article for me. It highlights my search term. Okay, and again, here might be a good example of wanting to use the snippet tool, because maybe I want to print this on one page and this on another if it wasn't going to fit. Okay, so and you'll note here I've got the see more article link because it's actually continued. Okay, so if I click that, that will show me the rest of that article. Okay, by doing that, we've made the link between the original start of the article and, of course, the second piece of it. Okay, I'll go back. So it brings me right back to that. Now, again, to show you that long S, if I click on page 1 of this newspaper in the snippet, it's a great way to illustrate that long S. Note here the Boston newsletter, okay, where the letter F was there. Okay, again, it's to so that you didn't lose the head and tail of the regular S. Okay, so great way to search out information where you know you may have some difficulty getting to information. Now, another way of searching information is by actual article type. Okay, so one of the things we've done is created and clipped out and segmented newspapers so that we could identify what was being published, whether it was an advertisement, a story, a poem, and so on. And one of the projects that I was told about that an economic teacher does is assigns the students a one-page essay to tell them what the economic landscape was during a specific presidential era. But they had to do this using cartoons. So the teacher would assign the presidential era, and the student would have to go from there. So they would come into the system and run the search of econ with an asterisk, and that's going to give me all the different versions of that word. So I can get economy, economist, and so on. Now, because I'm searching historical and current together, I've got 81 million results. It's going to take me forever to find cartoons. But when you go down these filters, you'll see that you can filter the information by date. I can put in a specific date, source type, a year, a specific source name, a location, a lexile, but lexile level does not apply to historical. It only applies to current information, language, and here is that article type that I mentioned. So here you'll see that we've created all these different article types, and again, only applies to historical information. And if I go down, I see here's a selection for cartoons. So I can click on cartoon, and I've taken my results set now from 81 million results to 1,250 results, which is identifying just the 1,250 cartoons that our editorial team has selected here. Now what I can do is I can go down and I see I've got presidential era as one of the filter types. So I can go to the era in history that my teacher assigned, okay, click on it and hit apply. So now with just a few clicks, I've taken my information from literally 81 million down to what's going to ultimately be 32. It's doing a search right now for that. Now that I've filtered my information, I can see here it's cartoons during the Richard Nixon presidential era, and I've only got 32 cartoons. So what I can do is simply click on that cartoon and open that up so I can view it and see, is this going to be a good cartoon for me to write my one-page essay about it? Okay. If not, of course, I've got my options right here to go back to my results set or go to my next result. So I can simply click next, and that'll bring me to the next result within my results set, and I can see here I've got a good cartoon that looks like it might be very applicable. Ever try your hand at economics? There's caricatures of Nixon and Kissinger talking about inflation here, how apropos China, all over today's news about that, right? The Mideast and so on. So great article here that I can use now for my one-page essay there. So as you can see, great little ways of searching information. And again, the same tools here. Here's that full article of the newspaper. Okay. And it's just great things you can do with the historical newspapers. I'm going to just click on this one page because I wanted to show you some more information in here. So because we have the full edition of every newspaper that we include in the historical newspapers, by clicking on that page, the reason I wanted to do that is I wanted to give you the illustration while this is loading of, so here I see we've got sales. So here's information on sales, okay, and this happens to be on vehicles and autos. So here I can see $2,987 for a car, and so on. So you can get great information on here. One of the other articles I've seen, or I should say projects I've seen assigned to students was go to today's newspaper and pick an advertisement, and then go to a historical newspaper. And a lot of times they would sign a year, or they would say, use a day that your grandparents were born, and find an advertisement, and tell me the difference in the way they were advertised. So great ways to use the historical newspapers in real life projects. I thank you for your time. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and please stay safe in this crazy world we're living in right now. Thanks again.